how you explain these things to people that you work with potential employers, how you discuss it in the workplace, that's a whole different thing to navigate, because some workplaces, I'm guessing, are very understanding and actually want to harness some of these differences. And I think other workplaces are like, whoa, that dude's weird, I don't want to work with him, or whatever. But so how, advice, Alysse, you've managed people in your career, but talk about how we navigate neurodiversity when we're trying to explain it to others in the workplace.
That's a really interesting question, Mark. And I mean, the only thing I ever have is my own experience. And when I was applying to work at the TV station at King 5 back in 2016, that was the first time as a person who identifies as being in long term recovery from alcohol and substance use disorder, in addition to depression, anxiety, and my list goes on, that I actually shared those things, those personal things about myself in the interview process when they said, "Is there anything else we should know?" And I was like, "As a matter of fact, let me pull out my list." Right. And I just went for it because I was confident enough in my personal brand, in my ability, in my reputation of being a really good worker who does what she says she's going to do and somehow pulls it off. And so I was kind of like, I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me. And it was really important to me to be in a workplace that had healthy boundaries. And because part of my thing is I've also been a workaholic, which landed me in the ER having emergency heart surgery at the age of 40 because I didn't know how to have boundaries for myself. And so it was really important to me when going through that interview process to go through my laundry list of challenges. Not just I'm not a morning person, but like I'm really not a morning person. If I'm there, I'm not even really going to be there. I can't help my natural clock. And sometimes I have to take longer lunch breaks because I have to go hang out at places and talk to people. And sometimes I can't go to every single event if I'm not in the right headspace, or I might need to Irish goodbye and leave early. But the flip side of what you're going to get with some of these challenges that I have is that I'm going to over deliver and I'm going to go above and beyond, and I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and you're going to be happy with the results, but I'm going to be a little challenging to work with. And I felt so empowered by doing that. But I was also at that point, back to full circle, in my 40s when I had that. So I don't know that at least for me, that I was comfortable enough with my challenges and in my own skin in my 20s and my 30s. But in my 40s, I was kind of like, no, this is who I am. And if you don't accept all of this, then this just isn't the right place for me. No
Yeah.
judgment on you, just not the right place for me. And to a certain extent, like I brought that into work P2P too. And one of the things I love, there's lots of things that I love about Dan and how he runs this company, but one of them is we're not going to work with people we don't want to work with. That doesn't mean we're not going to work with difficult people. That's not ever what he said, but we're not going to work with people we don't want to work with. And so I think there is something really empowering about owning your truth, but it took time for me to do that. And so I think it's a very personal choice that you have to come to on your own.
If I was sitting across the table interviewing someone and they said what you just said about the things that you've dealt with, you're in long-term recovery, I'm saying to myself, here is a truly honest person, because I'd rather hire someone who's been in recovery for 20 years than someone who is going home and drinking too much every night and lying about it. I
Yeah.
mean, like, who would you rather have as an employee? I have such profound respect for people who are public about their recovery, because I think honesty and truth are truly superpowers, and it inspires everybody around. And I love that, at least that story of just saying that in a job interview. I think in our 20s, most of us wouldn't have, and 30s wouldn't have had the courage to do that. But yeah, there is something that happens when you get a little bit older that you just realize I have to be me. And yeah.
There's also something about the time that we're living in right now, right? Like the Me Too movement regardless of how you feel about it, change the conversation in the office place. And people started being much more public about things that were never talked about in the office, right? And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. And with the growth of social media and all these kinds of things, I think we're just going to see more and more and more of this, which is great because I do feel that it, in all the ways, it will chip down on the stigma that is very much alive and well in a lot of areas. Even as a person who identifies as being in recovery from alcohol, like, there's still judgment that I mean,
Mhm.
I can't, online dating is a disaster for me because people are like, "Oh, you don't drink? No, thanks." Right? And I'm like, "Well, you didn't even give me a shot, man." Like, I'm actually a lot of fun. So I think we're going to see that this continual progression of the conversation. And I guess for me, I just try to pay attention to who's not talking, because not talking is an action too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Libby, did you ever have to talk about OCD with employers or with others in the workplace? Did you feel comfortable doing that, or did you feel like that was something that might have been a liability?
Yeah, I never told anybody, but I will say I do think I was more comfortable talking about OCD before anxiety. Just because I think it kind of, people talked about it all the time. It just kind of like started coming up a lot. And, I know a lot of people say, Alysse, this isn't directed at you, but I've been around you enough to know that we probably share some genetic history of some sort, or commonalities. But people will say like, "Oh, I'm just like so OCD." So it just kind of became something that people just talked about and assigned to themselves just to explain that being particular or something. I mean, truly OCD was very debilitating for me because I like would not sleep because I would just be up counting all night or I'd have to walk certain ways. I mean, I never thought something like the world was going to end, but it was definitely something that was the boss of what I was doing. But it was easier for me to talk about that first. And I don't know if but it was never something I talked about in an interview, never
Mm.
something I led with. And,
Yeah.
even a couple of months ago, I kind of had a little bit of a breakdown. And I had not been taking anti-anxiety medicine for a really long time for various reasons, but I think primarily because I was not taking them when I was trying to conceive and then pregnant. The options for somebody who's pregnant or nursing are not great. So I hadn't been taking one, and I kind of just got to a point where I was just like paralyzed with anxiety all the time about everything. I mean, I have like an art project that's been sitting here since August, and I can't move it somewhere else. Like I've moved it within a foot of itself, but I can't throw it away. I can't put it away. It just has to stay like right here. And I was just so tense all the time. And I was like, I don't actually have to live like this. Like, this is not required and this is not typical. And like, I kind of just chalked it up to being a working mom with two young kids and a family and, a marriage and a house or whatever. But that's not what it is. It's definitely my brain just not functioning correctly. And, the reason that they're assessing me for ADHD is because a lot of women are diagnosed, specifically women, later in life because they mask symptoms and they do, from what I've been learning, it is intertwined with so many other types of disorders that it's hard to know. You can sort of treat one with one medication, but then some of them make it worse. It's just like with all mental health stuff, it's just takes a lot of trial and error to figure out what is going to work. And I think in other jobs I've had, it was easy for me to cover my anxiety and my OCD and my ADHD tendencies because of the work I was in. I was in events, so it was always kind of crazy. There's always something last minute. I'm good at being like the duck, like very calm up top and then like paddling furiously underwater. And when I was at the TV station, I was doing events, I would work 60 hours a week, but it was okay because I didn't have children and I could figure it out. And I would procrastinate stuff, but I'd figure it out. And when I was at the TV station, I did work 5 days a week, but I really probably only had 3 or 4 days of actual work. But I had one or two extra days to do my work. And here, because we are so focused for 4 days out of the week, and I really do, like Alysse, value having a 3-day weekend to really like recover and do other things in my life that are important to me. It really, and I was working 5 days a week, and I was like, that is not required of me in my job. No one in my job is asking me to work that much. And yes, sometimes there are a lot of things going on. So it requires, me to catch up some days. But like, I either there's something wrong with my workload, or there is something wrong, like with me not being able to do this. And so, to be honest, being here has really, I think, helped me get a little further down the path of mental health clarity, because I don't know that I would have been able to ask for help or like really get to that point where I knew that I needed help and that this was something that I should just try and keep working past with my work habits. That it's something, and it's something that I was able to, share with, everyone here and lots of other people and on other work calls that we had. So it is definitely an environment, I would say, here where it feels not like taboo, or you're going to be
Yeah.
judged, or your work's not going to be valued.